Welcome to this explainer. Imagine for a second that your house has the ultimate, absolutely top-of-the-line home security system. It doesn't just lock the doors. It has an always-on-call response team, memory banks to recognize repeat intruders, and the incredible ability to actually repair broken windows after an attack. Well, you already own a system exactly like this. It's your immune system. Today, we're decoding this invisible shield to understand exactly how it keeps you alive in a world full of microscopic invaders.
Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for today. We're going to cover 6 operational layers of human immunity: your body's security system, the anatomy of the defense, the innate complement system, adaptive immunity and memory, vaccines as a training simulator, and finally, what happens when the system fails. Let's get right into it.
Section 1, your body's security system, your very own biological fortress.
This fortress is constantly working behind the scenes, literally 24/7, repelling germs, viruses, fungi, parasites, the whole shebang. It magically tells the difference between your own cells and foreign invaders, mobilizes to destroy threats, and then, brilliantly, just stands down once the threat is gone. But wait, all of this brings us to a really fundamental question. What exactly makes up your immune system? Because unlike your heart or your brain, it's not just one single thing you can point to.
Moving on to Section 2, anatomy of the defense.
Right, so your immune defense isn't just one localized organ. It's actually a vast, distributed network of specialized tissues, organs, and cells. And they're all working in this perfect, lightning-fast coordination throughout your entire body. So you've got the bone marrow. That's basically your troop factory, producing white blood cells. There's the spleen, which acts kind of like a high-tech blood filter to recycle old cells. Then the thymus, think of that as a boot camp where your special T cells go to mature. You also have hundreds of lymph nodes acting as drainage filters for waste. And of course, your skin and mucosa, which act as the very first outer wall to block invaders from even getting in. When you combine all of these with chemical messengers called cytokines and those target-seeking proteins we call antibodies, your body is literally fully equipped for war.
Now, what's really interesting here is that we can divide these defensive forces into 2 very distinct branches: innate and acquired immunity. You're actually born with innate immunity. Think of it as your basic alarms and outer walls. It gives you an immediate response to any invader, but, and this is key, it doesn't remember specific threats. On the flip side, acquired or adaptive immunity is like a highly trained special ops team. It's gained over time, it targets specific germs, and incredibly, it actually remembers them. That way, it can defeat them much faster the next time they try to show up.
All right, Section 3, the innate complement system. Let's look a bit closer at the immediate side of things. Your blood contains this totally fascinating rapid response tripwire known as the complement cascade. It basically consists of proteins, mostly made in your liver, that just circulate in an inactive form, kind of waiting around to be triggered. And this can happen in 3 distinct ways. First, the classical pathway is triggered when specific proteins bind to a pathogen. Second, the MBL pathway is triggered when it detects really distinct sugars on a germ's surface. And third, the alternative pathway is tripped by bacterial endotoxins, which is essentially the toxic outer coating of bacteria. Now, while they all start differently depending on the specific evidence they detect, they all share a single deadly goal.
So let's see how this builds. Once activated, this tripwire triggers a massive, amplified cascade. It quickly produces an enzyme called C3 convertase, and that leads to something called opsonization. Now, that's just a fancy biological term for tagging the intruders, essentially painting a huge target on their backs so your white blood cells know exactly what to destroy. It also triggers inflammation to bring in local reinforcements, and eventually forms what's known as a membrane attack complex. This complex literally punches holes right into the bacterial cell membrane, causing fluid to rush in until the bacteria swells up and just bursts, a process called lysis. It's pretty brutal, but absolutely crucial.
Moving on to Section 4, adaptive immunity and memory.
Now we transition over to your acquired or adaptive immune system. This is where your body specifically identifies, engages, and creates long-term memory of complex threats, long after those initial innate alarms have gone off. To pull this off, your cells use a really crucial mechanism called antigen presentation. Essentially, immune cells process an invading antigen and deliver these short peptide fragments right to the cell's surface, also that your T cells can recognize them. Think of it kind of like a team of security guards confiscating a piece of an intruder's ID badge, holding it up on the outer wall of the fortress, and checking it against a highly restricted database.
And this brilliantly illustrates how your body uses 2 main types of ID scanners for this process:
MHC class 1 and MHC class 2 molecules. So MHC class 1 scanners are found on most cells, and they flag intracellular threats. We're talking about things hiding inside the cell, like a replicating virus. This summons CD8 cytotoxic T cells to just destroy the infected cell immediately. MHC class 2 scanners, on the other hand, flag extracellular threats, things found outside the cells. These summon CD4 helper T cells, which act a lot like generals coordinating a massive, much broader immune response.
Which brings us to Section 5, Vaccines, your body's training simulator. Because your adaptive immune system relies on exposure and memory to build out its special ops team, modern medicine actually found a way to safely hack the system. We can prep our defenses before a real, dangerous threat ever even arrives. When you get a vaccine, you're essentially putting your immune system through a highly controlled training simulation. First up is antigen exposure, where a harmless form or a piece of a pathogen is introduced. This signals your B lymphocytes to jump into antibody production. Next, your cellular response kicks in as T lymphocytes recognize and engage that simulated threat. But the real magic happens in step 4, memory formation. Memory B and T cells stick around in your body for years, remembering that exact threat. Finally, some vaccines use a booster response just to refresh and strengthen that memory over time.
So, you might be wondering, how do we actually run these simulations safely? Well, scientists have developed several different approaches. Live attenuated vaccines use a weakened version of the pathogen. Inactivated vaccines use a killed version, which actually makes them safer for people with compromised immune systems. Subunit or conjugate vaccines use just purified components of the pathogen, like proteins or sugars. Toxoid vaccines are pretty unique. They target the harmful toxins produced by bacteria rather than the bacteria itself. And finally, mRNA vaccines, the newest approach. Give your cells temporary genetic instructions to safely produce a harmless viral protein, which then triggers that vital immune memory.
All right, our final section, Section 6, when this system fails.
As incredible and robust as this intricate security network is, it's not completely foolproof. Let's take a look at what happens when this complex system breaks down, overreacts, or just gets entirely overwhelmed by disease. System failure generally falls into two extremes. On one side, you have a weak immune system. This could be due to primary immunodeficiency that you're born with, or it can be acquired later in life through things like cancer or infections like HIV. This leaves the fortress totally vulnerable. On the exact opposite extreme is an overactive immune system. This is where your body launches a massive attack against normally harmless things, like what happens with allergies, or it mistakenly attacks its own healthy tissue. That results in autoimmune diseases like lupus or rheumatoid arthritis. It can even lead to sepsis, which is an extreme, life-threatening inflammatory response.
To give you a surprising, really specific example of a malfunction, consider a condition called hereditary angioedema. This is caused by a deficiency of just one specific inhibitor in the complement system we talked about earlier, the C1 esterase inhibitor. Because the single biological brake pedal is missing, the body produces excess inflammatory mediators like bradykinin. This causes severe, sometimes life-threatening swelling and fluid leakage. I mean, it really shows just how precision-engineered our bodies are, right? Just one missing piece changes everything. This whole biological journey brings us right back home to our central metaphor. As the Cleveland Clinic perfectly summarizes it, like a home security system that guards against intruders and sounds the alarm, your immune system is on call and ready. It works tirelessly to locate, identify, and remove germs, and it even deploys a crew to repair the cellular damage left behind by those intruders.
So the absolutely crucial point here is, you actually have a daily role in maintaining this system. You can actively support your immune health. The clinical data clearly shows that filling your plate with nutritious foods, getting regular exercise, maintaining a healthy weight with a BMI under 30, and prioritizing enough sleep are totally vital. Add in up-to-date vaccines to continuously program your memory cells and avoiding tobacco, and you are literally giving your body the physical resources it needs to defend you day in and day out.
Your body fights invisible battles every single second to keep you alive, healthy, and thriving. So knowing how beautifully complex, deeply layered, and truly powerful this biological network is, what will you do today to reinforce your ultimate security system? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope you walk away with a newfound appreciation for the fortress that is your body. Stay curious and stay healthy.